A very peculiar and uniquely human thing happened to our ancestors when they had gathered sufficient resources to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of themselves and their families. They started collecting. What's up, fishy friends? Welcome to Tim's School of Fish, and class is in session. This is a topic that I have thought about a lot, and it's something that I kind of want to dive deeper into today, and that is the psychology of knife collecting.
Hi, man. Do me a favor and go ahead and hit that like button. While you're at it, go ahead and subscribe. Thank you very much, man.
If you're one of those guys that says,
I'm not a knife collector. I've got my old trusty Kmart knife, and that's the only knife I'll ever need.
good for you, I'm not talking to you. But most of us in this space are collectors, whether you choose to admit it or not. There's a group of guys that refuse to take the moniker of collector, but rather choose to label themselves as users, as if you can't use what you collect. The two are not mutually exclusive. And then there's another group of guys.
A knife is a tool. You can't collect that. It's just a tool.
Well, cars are tools. Zippos are tools. There are countless types of tools that people collect, and not only collect, but also use. And so you can be a collector and a user too. There's kind of this stigma where some guys don't want to say they're a collector, but I submit that most people in this space, especially knife content creators, are collectors. And I don't want to talk about why knives, but I want to talk about why collecting knives. And there's going to be some people that'll say,
Don't overanalyze it, dude. It's just fun. It's just fun.
why though? Why is it fun? It's much more deep rooted than just it's fun. I promise you, there's an entire section of psychology devoted to the psychology and the study of collecting. Now, there's many different reasons why people collect different things, knives included. So I just want to kind of dig into the psychology of collecting knives today and maybe ask the question, where does it end? Does it end? So you guys hang out with me. Tell me what you think in the comments. I just want to sort of open up a discussion about this topic because I find it fascinating. So without further ado, let's get this camera turned around and dig a little deeper. All right, so people have been collecting things for centuries. Current estimates say that at least 40% of the population collects something, and most believe that it's even higher than that, that at least 50% or more of the population collects something. Now, why knives? For me, that's easy. I have a very analytical brain, but I'm also a creative. It's because they are functional tools. They combine both science and artistic expression and creativity. That's why knives. Watches are very similar. They combine science with creativity. So that's why knives for me. But why collecting? And where does it end? Is the collection ever complete? Well, there's several reasons that people collect stuff. Personal pleasure and fulfillment, knowledge and learning, relaxation and stress reduction, or as some people will just minimize the whole thing, fun. It's fun. It's deeper than that. There's some deep-rooted psychology that makes us continue to acquire knives when the truth is we don't need them, right? You might need 3 knives. Nobody even needs this many knives that I have on the table here. Not at one given time, anyway. I want to know, what is your reason for collecting, and specifically, what's your reason for collecting knives? most collectors become very, very passionate about the things that they collect. And I am no different. For me, it's probably slip joints is what I collect most. Then it would be fixed blades. Then it would be modern folders and vintage knives. Then I can subdivide that further. I have small sub collections. For example, my collection of Finch knives, my ROSECRAFT blades, traditional knife or slip joint collection, my case knives. I have a sub collection of case knives. I have a small burgeoning collection of Swiss Army knives, Victorinox knives, my USA made Schrade old timer fixed blades. Every time I think that that sub collection is almost complete, I find out that there was some other model that they had only released for 1 or 2 years, just like I found out yesterday that there's two more I didn't even know existed. So I have lots of different sub collections within my general collection at large. My collecting is kind of all over the place. But what is it that drives us to continue to acquire knives when we don't need them? For a lot of people, it's the rarity of that particular piece. And they've actually done studies on rare objects called the oddball experiments. And what they found was when people are presented with unique objects, it actually lights up certain pleasure centers of the brain that they were able to see on MRI. And this could go back and have evolutionary implications in that as humans, we tend to investigate unique things and continue to investigate those unique things until we determine if that unique object is of any value to us. And that's why that unique one of a kind knife actually appeals to us. It might not even be a very functional or practical knife at all, but the uniqueness alone makes it appealing. Another contributing factor is a collector's pride in acquiring rare objects. Not necessarily unusual or unique, but just rare. And then that can be further enhanced if you're able to acquire that rare object at a certain price. Sometimes it's that stimulation that motivates people, right? If I can get this at the right price, right? That drives some people, and that's where they derive pleasure. And sometimes, if you can get that rare or unique object, it's peer recognition or admiration because you're the only person or one of 10 that has one of these things. Then there are collectors that it appeals to their sense of history. This is probably mostly true with guys that acquire vintage knives. Maybe it's that sense of history that motivates those people to acquire vintage knives. And not only that, but be able to pass that history on from generation to generation. So you can see it's much more than just fun. What are the actual psychological motivations that make us continue to purchase knives when we certainly don't need any? For other collectors, it provides a sense of intellectual stimulation. And that's the case for me. I am fascinated by the history of certain slip joint patterns. I am fascinated by the history of certain fixed blade patterns and also the history of cutlery in certain parts of the world. Sheffield, England, in the Northeast in the United States, in the Pennsylvania, New York area, Zollingen, or as we say, Solingen, Germany, right? These are rich cutlery centers throughout history. That history is fascinating to me. So to me, it's as much an intellectual pursuit as it is an artistic pursuit. Now, certainly you can see by these knives on the table that I'm not really into your gray titanium modern folders. It just doesn't appeal to me aesthetically at all. I don't care how much precision went into the milling and all the mill work and all that. It doesn't appeal to me. I don't find them visually stimulating to look at. And again, there's no reason that our tools cannot be aesthetically pleasing. If that were the case, we would all drive around ugly, basic toaster oven cars. But we don't. When you go buy a car, you want it to have certain things, but you also want it to look good. You also want it to appeal to you aesthetically. And knives are no different for me. For me, it's the intellectual pursuit, the history of certain patterns, the engineering, and also the artistic and creativity. Now, some people go into steels, and that's what fascinates them. Now, admittedly, I don't care about that at all. Look, I don't. I don't give a shit. I'm going to take the right tool for a job. I'm not going to choose this knife to go on a camping trip. I'm going to choose the right tool for the job. And typically, the steel that's on those is going to serve me sufficiently well. If I go on a camping trip, it might be 4 days at the most. If that steel can serve me well for 4 days, I'm okay with that. But there's a lot of people that like to dive into the metallurgy. I don't give a shit about that. Now, admittedly, I just picked up this book for my own edification. I have absolutely no desire to debate or argue with anybody online about this steel is better than that steel for whatever reason. It holds an edge, the hardness, the whatever. I don't care if you've read that book and 10 other books 8 times and you can quote line and page. You're not a metallurgist, okay? I don't need all that to tell me if a knife functions well and serves my need. Now, some people are into that. Good for them. When I talk about intellectual pursuit, it's the history of the pattern and the making and engineering of the knife itself. Deep down at the core, I like knives because they combine science and art, but just liking knives is not a reason to collect them. The reason that I collect them is because it satisfies an intellectual itch for me in a strange way. For other collectors, it's the thrill of the chase. It's the anticipation of chasing that one particular knife that you've been chasing for a long time and then actually acquiring it. They've done tests on this too with MRI that have shown that the pleasure center in the brain is most lit up during the anticipation phase. And then once that actual knife that you've been chasing is acquired, that lit up portion of the brain goes dark again. And so it may be that leads us to continue collecting. It's the thrill of gaining the object more than it is actually owning the object. And that's what drives people to continue. So does it ever end? I don't know. I think that a lot of us, it becomes compulsive, and there's a certain compulsive aspect to it. Now, certainly all of it is regulated by financial constraints, but I think the need to keep acquiring it, I think it lights up that pleasure center in our brain and it makes us feel good. And then once we've acquired it, we need that feeling again. And so we continue to acquire them. And then there's the sense of community. I think that most of us probably started collecting knives before we became a part of this knife community or, met people with similar interest. And I think that might have some part of keeping us in this collecting, right? We find our tribe, if you will. And especially in today's age where social contact is mostly online, I think those connections are really important to people. I know this was a bit of a ramble, just something I've been thinking about. I enjoy thinking deeply about this kind of stuff. You guys let me know down in the comments what you think, not just why you like knives, but why do you continue to acquire them when you know that you don't need them? In other words, why do you continue collecting? And do you think it's ever going to end? As always, I appreciate you for watching. Give me a thumbs up, drop me a comment down in the comment section. Let me know if you agree or disagree with anything I've said or if I'm just wackadoo. Definitely a little wackadoo. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, please consider doing so. Just click my logo right over there. That's it for this episode of Tim's School of Fish, boys and girls. Class dismissed.